Chris Landry, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome into the game here in T-Town.
I am having a great day. We've got football getting ready to get cranked up in earnest, so the games are right around the corner, so I'm excited.
All right, so we got news coming out of Columbus, Ohio. Nothing still in about a 9-hour meeting. It looks like that you've got an athletic director that wants to go one way, and you've got a president that would like to go another way. I'm curious to see what you think about this entire situation.
Well, I think it really stems around a potential suspension. I think the president would like to go in that direction, and I think Urban Meyer is fighting that. It'll be interesting to see. It's clearly not a slam dunk, easy decision that they're all agreed upon, because if that were the case, we'd already heard a decision. The fact that it's continuing at this hour is a definite indication that there's definitely two schools of thoughts of how to handle it. But I don't see a scenario that I'm hearing where, Urban Meyer doesn't survive. I think it's definitely that is definitely going to take place. They were not able to find cause to the ability to fire him with cause, meaning fire him and not have to pay him. So he's going to be back. It's just a matter of how they couch it. It's going to be real interesting.
Chris, do you feel like this, and I know I feel so little for asking this question, but what we do is we talk about on the field. How much do you think this impacts that team and what they're able to do in 2018?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I've seen it happen both ways. I know they're a talented team. I know they're very capable of making the playoffs. If I were to pick the four most talented teams in the country, they'd be one of them. Might galvanize them, may motivate them. Us against the world, it may fuel them. I don't know how it's going to affect the future of the program in terms of how they're perceived by families, recruits, and whatnot. That will take some time to determine. But this year, I'd be surprised if it had a negative effect, even if he had to sit down a game or two.
Chris, as we travel back here to Tuscaloosa for a couple of minutes, I want to ask you your thoughts on the defensive side of the football. We'll get to quarterbacks in a minute, but the depth at linebacker is even a more concern than the last time we spoke, because another guy goes down in Chris Allen, which is from your area there in Louisiana, and a guy that you're very familiar with. Chris Allen goes down with another knee injury, will miss the season, according to Nick Saban on Saturday.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I hate it for the young man. Hate injuries this time of year. It seems like it's a lot of what I have up in my notebook, daily notebooks in college football, morning and afternoon, and they're filled with injury issues, and that's just an ugly part of the game. It does, seem to happen. I don't care what it is. All different levels that I've coached at, college or NFL, it seems to run in waves at a position. And there's a little bit of a theory that I have to it. Some of it's just bad luck, but a lot of it has to do that there's more reps that go out to less players, and I think it puts a strain on your position, and it does often lead to other guys getting injured. Yet, sometimes it's just there's no explanation for it. It just happens. It's part of it. But listen, there's a finite number of injuries that you can overcome. The biggest thing that I see, and the biggest problem that it comes, and I don't think people quite get this, because they just look and they say, boy, Alabama's talented. They've got all those 5 stars. It doesn't really matter. But if you don't have experience and you don't play guys with experience, Alabama's defense, by design, they drill these guys, and this is why you see guys every year. They come along, they play a little, they get experience, and then they're the next guy on the block ready to go step in and have a great career. And there's a reason for that. How they teach and how they groom. It is a complex defense that requires you to know a lot and learn a lot and to get a lot of snaps to learn it. You start to eradicate certain players with experience, and you're playing younger guys, you have to modify your defense, and you do less things because of it. And, here's what people don't understand. Everybody says, well, just make it simpler. And you make it simpler, you become easier to attack. And so all of a sudden, you become more vulnerable, perhaps even in some games where you don't think that they won't be challenged. And, that is the problem and the big issue that as a coach we get, that I don't think fans just, now here's the thing, no one's going to feel sorry for Alabama. They're not going to feel sorry for anybody else that has injuries, so no one's going to feel sorry for them. But just from a real standpoint of when you're preparing a football team, it limits kind of what you do. And this is a little different style of defense that requires a lot of experience, particularly at linebacker, where you involve a great deal in coverage and against the run and making checks. It is quite challenging, and it's just more difficult for young guys. And the only way to do it is you just can't do as much. So you just can't put in all of the ingredients that you want. So, I don't know, the meal tastes a little bland. It still may be okay, and it might go down. It's just not quite as tasty. It's just not quite as good because you can't do as many things. And that's very, very frustrating from coaches when it happens that way. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Chris, when you talk about going through everything with Alabama, I mean, we could talk about new coordinator in Tosh Lapoy. Craig Kulagowski takes over defensive line. When you talk about Carl Scott in the secondary, Pete Golden at inside backers, you do have Tosh Lapoy still coaching outside backer, but he has a new responsibility. You lose 8 starters. Maybe that number's a little bit misleading. We talk about depth. We talk about the alpha dog. When you look at this defense, Chris, and I know we're 10 days away, but is it fair to say that this may not be the typical Nick Saban defense that we've come to expect in the last 11 years?
Yeah, particularly early because of the reasons that I mentioned. A lot of new faces, a lot of changes. You've enumerated them very well. All of that. I think that how they're going to call it, there's a lot of familiarity, but there is an art to calling a defense. There's an art to calling a play on offense. Even though you know the system, that's a different dynamic that you're asked to do. So it's a different skill set, and not everyone is as good at it, just like not every coordinator becomes a good head coach. Not every position coach becomes a good coordinator. So there's an art to that. So there'll be some adjustments. I do think that because of so many changeovers, that there will be a learning curve, a growth period. I don't think they're going to be as good early on as they will in the latter part of the year. That doesn't mean that they're going to be more in danger of losing a game early. Maybe quite the opposite, because they may face somebody later that's more difficult. But just looking at that team, comparing that team up against itself, you look at every one of Nick's teams that he's had, every one of them has gotten better as the season goes along. When you look at the tape and you study how they've gotten better and how they've been able to do more and more and install more things and do more things in all 3 phases of the game, they've become better and better. Now, most people just look at it as, did they win or not? And if you lose late, well, they didn't get better, but that's not true. Every one of his teams has gotten better. Now, in some cases, there've been injuries, and if you have enough injuries and you catch somebody at the wrong time, it could hurt you. And I think the Auburn game last year was an example. But yeah, I think it's fair to say I don't know that it's going to manifest itself in a loss, but it could mean some of these games a little bit earlier are more challenging than any of us, including me, might have thought. We'll see.
Well, even Nick Saban talked about it on the offensive side of the football. That maybe there's more pressure there to score more points, that will have to be able to make up the difference on that side of the football.
Listen, there's no doubt. So, let's go down that path for a second. Let's just say that their defense is going through some growing pains early. So how do you deal with it? How do you win those games specifically? Well, you're probably going to have to score more points, and it may be you're giving up, 21 points, 24 points, and you got to score 28 or 30. Or maybe, you give up 17 and you got to score 21, 24. There's no doubt about it. The other thing is lots going to fall on the offensive line in running the football. It's not just scoring points, but it's game control. Game control is just that, keeping your defense off the field, less snaps, playing fresher, and playing with a lead. One way to help your defense out is to get some points, and then, unlike, let's say, in a conference like the Big 12 where everybody's trying to score every time quickly, score what I call slowly, methodically, wear down an opponent. And if you can control the game and play game control from the offensive side, then you've got a fresher defense that is perhaps playing more snaps with the lead and maybe even a double-digit lead. Then you make an opposing offense one-dimensional. You become more effective defensively because you're playing in a circumstance where that opponent's offense doesn't have the same run-pass balance ratio than it would if it's a one-possession game or a three-point game. If you're down and it's in the second half, you're down 10 points, you're going to have to throw the football a little bit more. And if you're prepared for that and you know that, that gives you an edge. So there's no doubt that there's going to be pressure on all aspects, and that's what's part of being really good in all three phases. You know, you got to be good in being able to score points. So what does that really mean? Now, you've got to be good up front. The quarterback is going to have to make good decisions, not just big plays, but good decisions. Don't turn the football over, because everything I just said is flipped over if you're turning the football over. Now you're putting your defense in harm's way. Now you're putting a defense that might be learning and kind of getting their feet settled, and all of a sudden they're back and they're having three possessions in their own end because you turn the football over. Then it becomes a problem. So what you want to be able to do is be able to maximize explosive plays, but I think just as important is controlling the line of scrimmage from the offensive side. That means running the football effectively, keeping the defense fresh. That is absolutely where you want to rely upon, and it's also going to be important. Let's not forget, a third of the game that affects it just as much, special teams, coverage units, protection units, getting, consistent threes when you're in a position to do it. All those things are going to be important to help out this defense, which I think, by the way, is going to be a very good defense by year's end, and maybe a little bit better early on than people might think. They've still got some more daddies on that defense that can play. They're still in better position, Ryan, than most people. Compared against, if you eliminate those injuries, well, of course it's not as good as if those guys were there. But they're still in better shape than just about anybody else.
I don't think anybody's going to send sympathy cards to Nick Saban, right?
No, they're actually quietly probably happy that they're going through it. It's like they say, people ask how you doing, and the reality is they really get terrible after they say it, but they really don't care.
I got you. You're reading great. We're talking to Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com, where you can become a member today, and great breakdown analysis from a guy that has been a coach, a scout, an administrator, takes you inside the film room. All right, Chris, let me ask you about quarterbacks in your opinion. We're 10 days away. Do you think we're closer now to knowing who's going to be the starting quarterback, even though Nick Saban's not going to give it up? Do you think we're close to maybe getting some more hints out there from Saban and maybe some of the sources that we talked to behind the scenes? What do you think?
You're not going to get any hints out of Nick until he's ready to announce it. But let me just address it. I fully expect Tua to be the quarterback, to be the starter. I know it's a great story, and it is. Listen, everybody asks me that, who's going to start at Michigan? Who's going to start at Texas? Who's going to start at Alabama? That's what people want to know. And I get it. Okay, but let me just step and explain something from a coaching standpoint. Even though I think Tua is going to get the start, I don't think people realize that. What if you go out and Tua injures his hand, in practice tomorrow or the next day? They've got a situation, and I've said this all off season. They got to get both of these guys, and even a third guy, but mainly two, ready to play winning football for them. And it's a good possibility that they're going to need both of them to play well this year, because you don't know what's going to happen from an injury standpoint. Tua's had the injuries in the spring. Again, if he's if you come out and and say that, here's the reality that no one will tell you. I'll say it. I don't mind saying it. Jalen has not had a good offseason. He didn't have a good spring. He's regressed. He's lost confidence. Well, it's their job to get that confidence back and to get him back on track. While all the fan base is saying, the hell with Jalen, Tua's our guy. Yeah, Tua's your guy until he goes down with an injury in week 1 or week 5 or whenever, and then now, come on, boy, come on. The bottom line is, as a coach, you don't look at it like a fan or the media does. They got to get both of these guys ready to go. And Tua gives them, I think, the best chance to have success in the passing game, mainly because I don't think Jalen, who I have said a lot of good things about here and other places, he's regressed. For whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe this whole distraction and the bench, I don't know. He just is not the same, and he's not developed, from what I understand. And the little bit I've seen in some of the practice cut-ups. So it's their job to get him ready to go as much as Tua. So it doesn't benefit you if you're Nick Saban to come out today or last week and say, yeah, Tua's the better guy. And, it doesn't make any sense for him to say what I just said. Because then what are you going to do when he's injured? Go back to Jalen and say, all that stuff. Because they listen to that. Yeah, I was just kidding. You've got to you've got to be professional, and you've got to get these guys ready to go. And when has Nick ever come out and said, hey, here's the guy? I mean, whenever there's been any question mark, it's always you take it to the end. I mean, I don't care who it's been. You can go back in the lineage since he's been there. So that's the reason for it. And I know everybody wants to, maybe put their bet in for the Heisman or have their bar bet with their friends. None of that matters. What matters is getting two quarterbacks ready to go. And I said it, I think they could win all of their games, with maybe one or two exceptions, with either quarterback. But if that's not the case, or if the feeling is that Jalen is not quite well, they better get him ready. They better get Mr. Jones ready. They better figure out, life beyond Tua, because that might happen in one play. And that's my point I wanted to make, that while it's a story, the story doesn't matter. The story doesn't win you games or championships. It's getting your team ready, and I think that's what they're trying to do with the quarterback situation.
Chris, let me ask you, Nick Saban. You've worked with this guy. You understand him. How much do you think, and let's just take, because you said you think Tua's going to get the start, okay? How much do you think it is Nick Saban having to deal with those, and I don't know a better word, inside demons, right? I mean, the 40 years, he's always played with a different style quarterback. Maybe this guy's the gunslinger. Maybe this guy takes too many chances. Maybe he's going to, scare Nick Saban to death with that arm of trying to put it where not most quarterbacks have the confidence to throw it. How much do you think it's Nick Saban dealing with, I don't know how to take this. I mean, maybe it's just inner workings of his philosophy and the way he plays the game and coaches the game that maybe Tua's a little bit different.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's fearful of it. I think what he looks at, and he gets it, that I know last year he regretted not playing Tua more leading up to it. And I think the fact that he didn't was the reason why he didn't pull the trigger on playing Tua against Clemson. He didn't feel as comfortable. And, of course, you could go back and look at that game and say, you could, but that game wasn't really in doubt. Listen, people give a lot of credit to Nick for the decision he made at halftime, and so do I. But to be honest with you, that game was going nowhere. And it was maybe not as difficult a decision to make in terms of just philosophically. It's always difficult when you have to make that change, but it was an easy decision from a football standpoint, in other words, because they just didn't have any answer in the passing game. So it was a risk, but not that much because the option was they were probably giving up one score away from that game being over. Now, let's go to this year. And I've said this all offseason. What have I said about Tua? Everybody's got him. He's going to win the Heisman. He's going to be this and that. He's got to learn how to play quarterback. Okay? He can make plays. But as I said in the championship game, he made some plays that would make anybody prematurely gray as a coach. Very costly plays, bad decisions. That's part of inexperience and part of what they're trying to, through experience and snaps, to get them out of. So, yes, the reason why Alabama's been dominant, if you look at other programs that have been successful, you can trace it to, look, Auburn. Well, they've been really good when they've had a great quarterback. They stink when they don't. Alabama's been good despite their quarterback in some cases because they play so great around them. And the reason why the quarterbacks earn the job at Alabama is not for the plays that they do make, but the plays that they don't make, and that is protecting the football. So, absolutely, Tua will have to gear down himself to where he makes better decisions and throws it where it's supposed to be and not put the ball in harm's way. And if he doesn't do that, then it's not going to work, because if you put Alabama in a high-scoring game up and down the field and they turn the football over, then all bets are off. I mean, every game is a potential shootout that, it's like playing in the Big 12. You don't know who the heck's going to win each week. That is not what he wants, and that's not how this program's been built. So what he wants is the ability to be able to run the football, run more play action, get Tua to make some plays within the pocket in the drop back off play action, which Jalen hasn't been very good at. And then, try to do some things outside the pocket to be creative, but yet not be so crazy where he's taking a bunch of shots either, but throw high percentage passes. So now you've got a passing game, can score more points, but not at the risk of turning it over, because the only way Alabama loses games on their schedule this year is if they turn it over. And if you're a -3 in the turnover margin, I got news for you. They got a lot more games that would be in peril that I would not say at this point would be.
Chris, our final question. Let me ask you about the Auburn Tigers. What have you heard? What can you tell us? What are your expectations going into this big, gigantic game against Washington?
I like their defense a lot. I think they're better than Washington. I expect them to beat Washington. Wouldn't surprise me, if they win decisively. But Washington's very well coached. So we'll see. I don't know. I mean, there's a little bit of an unknown. Here's the thing about Auburn. Offensive line and running game, I've got to see that. Like Stidham a lot. I think this is a really good defense. I think this Auburn team, I think they're better than most people think, but their schedule's difficult. See, they've got, as everyone knows, they've got to play Georgia and Alabama. So their schedule's more difficult than Alabama, so I don't know that their record's going to be as good. I don't see them beating Alabama on the road. Don't see them beating Georgia. So if they drop one other game, that's a 3-loss team that I think can be really, really good. And I mean top 10 good. But the record might not reflect it. I can go back to last year. I talked about how good I thought they were, and yet they kind of had some issues and struggled a little bit, but you kind of saw down the stretch they were pretty good. And then, listen, I'm going to tell you, you'd lose your shirt trying to bet a Gus Malzahn coach team, because that team will jump up and beat anybody, but they have been the ultimate inconsistent program. I mean, they are up and down, and it wouldn't surprise me if they blew out Washington. I think they're capable of doing that. It also wouldn't surprise me if they laid an egg, because I just don't know what you're going to get out of Gus's teams. I mean, you can see that within one game. They dominated LSU. Dominated LSU for a half. We're on the verge of blowing them out in Tiger Stadium like they hadn't done, and then completely collapsed and was one of the worst coaching jobs I saw all of last year in that second half. So it's kind of hard to hang your hat and get overly excited. But I'm going to tell you, this defense have got some war daddies on it that are really good. I mean, they are right. They could play anywhere, and they at times, can be stifling. So they're going to be fun to watch as they normally are. You never know what you're going to get out.
The folks at Landry Football want you to join their family this football season. It's LandryFootball.com. Get on all the inside information and analysis on the college and pro game, from the film room breakdown to all the latest information, recruiting, draft, coaching news, and all this and more. Each Tuesday and Thursday, the Landry Football Podcast with Chris Landry. Each Wednesday, catch the new Rush the Field College Football Podcast. All of those are must-listens. Check it out, LandryFootball.com today for their best season membership package ever. For less than a magazine subscription, you'll get access to the insights of a veteran coach and scout. Tell them that you heard it right here on the game on Tide 102.9 to receive their best membership package yet. It's LandryFootball.com. Chris, as always, thank you again for your time. And next week, can you believe it? It's football time, finally. 240 days.
It will be. And next week, of course, I'm working on it. We'll have the full, complete, in-depth film room breakdown of Alabama, Louisville, Auburn, Washington. We have about 25 games. I'm working on them now. So there's going to be a whole lot to just sink your teeth into as we get ready for the big opening week of college football. Even got some information on the appetizers this weekend in the four games that are played this weekend.
Week 0, I think, is what we're
labeling.
Week 0. Chris, as always, thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you, bud. Take care.